All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. We've all heard the saying, she'll be right. And we've all heard the saying that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Today, on our 200th episode, I've invited a very, very special guest, a bloke that sort of encapsulates both of those sayings through his story. And for those, some of you may have met this person before, some of you may not, some of you may have potentially seen him at different events and different parts of your work life or even out there in the industry. But I'd like to welcome Josh Jones to the show. Josh, welcome.
Thank you very much, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. And a big honor to be part of the 200th episode.
Yes, 200th episode. I can't believe it. It's one of those things that when you sort of start anything, you sort of don't know where it's going to end up. And I think when we started the show, I didn't tell people it was going to be weekly. I didn't really tell people it was going to be an ongoing thing in case I just wanted to leave that door open or the option to just bail anytime I felt like it was too much work, but We're still going.
Yeah, and that's great. I think there's a message in that there for many people, probably reading between the lines on that, mate. You don't have to know what the end goal is. I think just taking these things on and trying them and giving it a shot is half the journey, and then seeing where it goes. Even if it was only going to be 10 episodes, at least giving it a crack is half the journey, isn't it?
Literally is. And I've learned so much from it. And I'd like people to know about your story because, as I said, like you've spoken at events before, and you've got a really interesting story. But I don't want to. I'll leave it with you to sort of to share it with those listening to this that, again, may not have heard about it. But if you could probably start maybe by telling people about who Josh Jones is and I guess the experience that you went through and just a bit of a brief overview of the story.
Yeah, certainly, mate. So I was actually originally born in Wales and then at a young age moved to New Zealand and then back to Wales and then eventually to Australia in 2000 and towards the end of 2009. So I'm a bit of a wanderer, so to speak. The family get itchy feet, so we move around a lot. But now so happy and proud to call Australia home. And I suppose that's where the biggest part of my story has probably evolved and started from. In 2015, I was a fourth year apprentice diesel fitter in the mines, and I was based at a Queensland coal mine. And what started off as a routine swing or like any other swing of a 7-day on, 7-day off roster. I was working night shift that week, and I'd been asked to work alongside one of our senior tradesmen to kind of be his offsider for a job that was changing tyres on one of the large pieces of earth moving equipment. It was a Caterpillar 777 truck, which was converted to a water cart. And on the last tyre of that job, in the early hours of the morning of the 16th of February 2015, just after 4:30 in the morning, without any warning whatsoever, there's been a catastrophic failure of that rim, that tyre assembly. It's blown the tyre off the rim. The force of that blast and the fact of the size of the components that make up that assembly that has blown off the rim and struck myself and Cavey, my workmate, Stephen Cave. And he's unfortunately been killed instantly on impact. And the force of the blast has also blown most of my clothes off me, actually, and blown me about 35 foot across the workshop floor. And the main piece of the rim that struck me split my arm open from my shoulder down to the middle of my hand on my left arm. And then those injuries were so severe that it resulted in the eventual amputation of my left arm just below my elbow. about just over 3 weeks later. That's, I suppose, the short version of the accident, so to speak, or the moment. And then what has become the journey of the last 9+ years has been something quite as equally as eventful. Thankfully, more on the positive side rather than the negative side. And I have been taking as many opportunities that come my way as possible because I'm all about now the experience and trying to make the most of everything. I was so close to becoming, a name on a plaque, so to speak. It's a miracle that I'm alive. So I'm trying to make the most of absolutely everything now, mate. Yeah.
It's definitely a miracle. And to be honest with you, I've that truck that you've mentioned, the it's a Cat 777G, I think, or Cat 777 something.
Cat 777, yeah. I think it was a C series or something. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it's a huge truck, but it's actually one of the smallest ones on the site as well. Funnily enough, it's yeah.
Wow, yeah, I've looked it up. It's massive. Like it's a big tire. And can I ask you, like, with that accident, safety, as far as safety is concerned, because I mentioned earlier, the saying of "she'll be right." A lot of us
Yeah.
have that attitude in life. And when I was having a chat to you about this the other day, you mentioned that you're an ambassador for safety. You do a lot of safety gigs, talks, educating people about safety. At the time, was safety being followed? Like the protocols was.
The way to sum it up, I think, is there was probably gaps in processes and systems and gaps in, I suppose, our mindset and mentality towards safety. Very much an element of she'll be right. We knew that things can go wrong and we've seen things that can go wrong. I don't think anyone on that site would have thought anything like this would have happened. So very much that she'll be right ideology. After the fact, after it's happened, it's so easy to see the red flags now that were staring us in the face. I often used to say that it happened, and I did say it earlier, it blew up out of nowhere. There was no warning that it was going to blow up. But now that I look back and reflect on the working conditions, not just at that site, but on other sites that I'd worked at, there was actually always, I think there's always these little indicators. They're not going to tell you what people raising concerns and those concerns not being addressed or being downplayed, things getting swept under the carpet, a combination of things spreading the workload thin or spreading the spread thin across the site. So that brings in that pressure element. Push to get jobs done. We're under time crunches all the time. All these things play a part in it. And I think now looking back that there were these indicators that we were heading towards something. And I do remember a time, I can't remember exact time frame before it, but it was I'd say in the weeks, if not the few months leading up towards the accident, there was a few of us on site that we did say, we think there's going to be an accident happening. We never would have thought it would be this catastrophic and have these repercussions, but that was because of things that were happening among, so new people were coming into the business and making changes that just didn't really make sense. It was like they were coming in and making things right, do it our way or no way. And so a lot of things didn't sit well with us amongst the crew. And unfortunately, I can recall many times that my friend that was killed in raising these concerns and really trying to push for better conditions for us. And I just don't think that they were really, to be honest, I just don't think they were adhered to, or they just downplayed them and didn't really listen to them. Which is quite a hard thing to look back on and realize that, especially now after what has happened. So that's why I'm such a big advocate now and pushing for better, not just better safety processes, but just trying to instill a better safety awareness in each worker, especially apprentices. I was an apprentice at the time. So you kind of are guided and put so much of your faith in the people above you, those that are managing you, so to speak, or supervising you, those with far more experience than you do. But unfortunately, if they're ill-equipped or inequipped for the work, then it's putting you in unnecessary risk as well.
Because we like that, aren't we? But like we sort of, you talk about faith. Sometimes do you think maybe we have too much faith in ourselves and that we think we're bulletproof? We think that, because I mean, admittedly, there are literally, hundreds, if not thousands of safety protocols that we all have to follow every day with work. And maybe we sort of it can get a bit too much, but at the same time, we also do think we're bulletproof because there's things that we maybe think we don't need to follow, or especially, I mean, that tire that the person, it's Steve, was that his name? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Steve. Yeah, Stephen
yeah.
Cave. Yep.
How many tires do you think Stephen had replaced in his life?
Oh,
That was probably his
yeah, that's.
hundreds.
Oh, yeah, he probably could have done. Probably knew the task like the back of his hand. Yeah. Whereas for me, that week was the first time I'd been involved in that sort of work actually.
Yeah, wow.
So all of my faith and guidance is in other people. I have a lot of faith in my own abilities. Even though I was still an apprentice, I'm quite comfortable with figuring things out, have a very strong problem solving mindset and attitude and ability. Half the reason I think I became a heavy diesel mechanic. I love that element of fixing things, figuring out how things work, and was pretty good at it. But this was a job where I was, new to it and heavily guided by those around me with more experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and for me, the reason, I mean, when we first met and we were talking, and I was not just hearing about your story, but even just having this discussion about safety and about the whole concept of, the fact that a lot of us, honestly, we just think everything's always just going to be okay and that we don't need to take precautions or even think about things like, for example, you've probably heard the stat, but car accidents statistically are more likely to happen near your street. That's
yeah,
I heard that years ago, and it's the same street you live on, the same street you drive through every day, but that's where you're most likely to have a car accident, and
yeah,
that just gets me thinking that it's that concept of everything's going to be okay, and it's just when you do things so many times, you just assume that it's all the outcome's always going to be fine. But I related it a lot to, and you're probably, and I know, when I said, hey, let's have you on the show, you're probably initially thinking, what has this got to do with money in people's lives? Or not people's lives, but money in particular. But for me, I relate to it because as an advisor, when I talk to people about their financial situations and their goals and what they're planning, a lot of people, if not everyone, has some sort of element of she'll be right, where they know they probably need to budget, but they've never really discussed it or never really put anything in place, or they know they need to sort of look at their super and not just ignore it, but they think, it'll be okay. It's fine if I just leave it. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Or maybe they know they need life insurance at the back of their heads, but they just sort of put it off because they think, I haven't died yet, so it's all good, or getting their
yes,
wills done, or
yeah,
investing, or looking at retirement, or all these things where people just leave them last minute, or sometimes it's literally too late.
yeah,
So for me, that was when you were explaining that, it was resonating from that perspective. But
yeah, yeah,
why do
100%.
we do that? Why do you think we sort of do that? It's as
I think
humans.
there's an element of complacency in there. If I relate to the safety element and what you said about the car accidents, it's very interesting, isn't it? And I think it is that element of we've done it a billion times. I know this road and I've gotten home safely every single time. So it's like you get a false sense of security. And you think it's just because it happened a few times, it's going to happen the same every other time. Similarly, the people doing their jobs in a mine site, construction site, wherever it is, maritime, or these high risk environments, we do it once. And sometimes if we take a shortcut and don't follow process and procedure and we get away with it, that shortcut then becomes part of our own process and procedure. And then I potentially think that same mindset is coming into our financial decision making. If they go, well, I'm getting by at the moment, so I know I need to do this, but I'll do it down the track. I've got a lot on my plate, or we look for excuses to do because these things aren't easy. None of these things are easy to follow processes, to have a really thorough and strict safety mindset, to be very strict for your own personal wealth goals. It's not easy things to do. There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of process and steps to follow. And to be honest, I think most people just want the easy way, and the easy way is just not doing it. And then it's too late when they realize that they need those things. It's too little too late. And the perfect example I have of that for anyone thinking, it just reminded me of it when you mentioned life insurance. In the months before the accident, I remember my partner, she came home from work. She had just had one of those corporate superannuation discussions or presentations at her workplace. And I specifically remember her coming home and saying, we really need to look at your super and your personal, like your income protection and personal injury, TPD. And I went, oh, yeah, no worries. 22 years old. I had no idea. Well, I was 21 at the time, actually. So it was about a month or two before my birthday. And I went, yeah, okay, yeah, it sounds interesting. I had no idea what those things meant, but I was like, well, I'm working in the mines. Yeah, it's probably something I should do. But at the same time, I'm 21. I'm not going to be disabled. Literally. And that's not me trying to pitch the idea of needing TPD insurance. That is exactly what happened. And then a couple of months later, I'm involved in an accident and become disabled. And I look back on that and go, oh wow, we literally talked about having these protections in place, and I just didn't do it. I thought I will do it, but I'll get to it soon. And that element of delaying it was quite critical. Like, that income protection would have been a huge help in those early years of recovery, would have eased a lot of the burden. Yeah. So I think we look for the easy ways instead of taking accountability and taking action right there and then. And we give ourselves this false sense of security that we've got more time to actually do these things when in fact, a lot of the time we don't.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. And to be honest with you, like even hearing this from you, and as you're explaining it to me, Josh, like I guess I've got mixed emotions. Like part of me, it breaks my heart, to hear that, you considered it and you didn't do it, and it's. You're in a situation where obviously you look back and you wish you had done it, but at the same time, it's sort of it's a breath of fresh air for you to be sending out that message to people listening to this, because so many times I do speak to clients about these things or people, and for me, I can relate to these situations because I've got clients where I'll set up their cover and it's happened where literally 7 months later they've been diagnosed with something, and the first thing they say is, "Thank God we set up this insurance."
Yeah.
Look, at the same time, don't get me wrong, I explain to clients that they can have cover for 10 years or 20 years and potentially never claim. So they need to be comfortable with what they're paying and what they've got. But it is important to send out that message, and as far as, your situation is concerned, I love that you said earlier that, it's a miracle that you survived. And I agree, thank God you're here to tell the story. And what I really love is that you're using this as a way to help others, through the speaking that you do, through the safety work that you do as well. And even in general, like in life, I feel like I know it hasn't been an easy journey, and I'm not going to even pretend to know what it feels like, but it's that saying I mentioned earlier, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Like I really think you haven't just made lemonade. I think you've made icy poles out of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I see
No,
it.
thanks, mate. I've started to use the term, I've started making margaritas out of it and then got people going, how the hell did you do that? And because, I think there is that element of, we sometimes restrict our own abilities by just getting in the wrong mindset. So now I'll be honest, I had quite a negative, and understandably so, after the accident, very negative, and thought I'd never be able to do any of the stuff I used to do, and started proving myself wrong, and then quickly pulled down those barriers and stopped becoming my own, I suppose, stopped holding myself back, and soon realized that nothing's really out of reach. So that can be whether it's personal, like just things I want to do day to day, or whether it's, exactly that, financially, business wise, everything else. Where I am today, 9 years ago, I would have never have thought I'd be anywhere near or would have achieved half the things I have so far. The fact of being an owner of this safety business that I have, being a partner in a commercial real estate firm, these were things that I thought, anything like this would have been off the table for me after the accident. And so for those people listening that have got their own mental barriers, just stop listening to them and start proving yourself wrong, because you'll be surprised where you can actually get to. One of my biggest nitpicks now is actually people playing the victim mentality, because it's such a sad thing to see that they've believed these things so much that is what's actually the only thing that's holding them back. There's nothing else. It's just their own thought process and limitation factor. So, it's quite heartbreaking to see people falling victim to that.
Can I ask, you mentioned pulling down barriers, and can I ask you what process did you go through doing that? Because I feel that it's something that isn't in a book. It's something that no matter, you could hear it 100 times from someone. And it's everyone has their own way of doing it. Is it? Could you? I don't even know if it's something that you can even explain, but
It's
is there a
no, yeah, it
process?
is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to explain. Sorry to cut you off there, mate. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. You've hit the nail on the head. There's not a book, and everyone is different. You can go through the exact same thing. So someone else could go through the exact same incident that I did, but we could have totally different responses and reactions to it. But the biggest thing that I think is probably common with everyone is the element of talking. Something I didn't do enough at the start, talking truthfully about how I was feeling and what was getting me down and my own sort of internal battles, whether that was talking to my family or psychologists. The moment that I started being open and honest with them and talking openly and truthfully and sharing my vulnerabilities, that was one of the biggest kickstarters. Because I kind of, a lot of the time, it does a few things for me anyway. Keeping all the emotions and your own issues bottled up makes them grow and fester and they become bigger than they actually are. So as soon as I started talking about them and sharing them with someone else, half the time, halfway through telling them, I've already realized what the issue was. I've kind of voiced it, I've put it in perspective, and I've come up with my own resolution or own solution. Or if I haven't, then they're able to give their feedback and their input and their sort of perspective. Um, and so that was the biggest thing. But one of the other things for me as well was because I spent a lot of time in quite a dark place, and a lot of the time just sort of letting that harness that negative energy. So I started going to the driving range, playing some golf. I'd never played golf before my accident. And what I soon realized was when I was in that environment, it was like a distraction. I wasn't thinking about all those negative thoughts. I wasn't having the flashbacks of the accident and having I have a lot of that sort of survivor's guilt aspect and real sort of strong negative thoughts surrounding that. But a lot of that was out of my mind when I was at the golf course or at the driving range trying to learn how to play golf. So I would say for anyone that is having those, has any barriers and trying to pull those barriers down, trying to find something or somewhere that gives you that escape and that distraction. So then that gives you time to have a bit of clarity and really think about things with an open mind. Yeah, it's just funnily enough, it's happened to be golf for me, which I never thought would be the thing that pulled me out of a hole.
Yeah, well, I mean, in on that note, can you? I mean, for those this is an audio only podcast. For those that haven't met you before, can you explain as well how what has happened to your arm and because like playing golf, it's is it something you ever thought you'd ever be able to do, or did anyone ever think you'd be able to do
No,
it? Because you need two arms to play golf.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. Like before the accident, the most of golf I'd ever done was go to the driving range, as you do when you're younger, have a few beers and trying to hit the ball as hard as you can. And I was terrible. And then I was terrible when I started with one arm. But you're exactly right. I had to tell myself instead of saying I'm not going to be able to do that, I've only got one arm. I'm going to come. Like I went with my brother. I said, yeah, I'm going to come with you, and I'm going to try. So that was the first thing. Actually, not assuming I couldn't do it. So that was the first step. And then went there and I was terrible, but I was able to do it physically. It's not too strenuous. So if you can call it, I call it a sport. I know a lot of people have an issue calling it a sport. They don't think it's sort of physically exertive enough to be classified as a sport, I think. But I think it's one of the most adaptable sports out there for people with physical impairments. And so I compete against people in wheelchairs. I got mates that have on two prosthetic legs. There's people that have got no arms, no legs that are using prosthetics and other attachments to play golf. So there's definitely no barriers in it. But yeah, for some reason, I just ended up getting swallowed with the golf bug. Started hearing the stories about Jack Newton and an ex-professional golfer that lost his arm in what sounds like an absolutely horrific plane accident, walking into the propeller, and carried on playing golf afterwards and got to a very good position with his handicap. So I sort of took all those things on board and just kept at it really. But yeah, so playing one-handed, it definitely has its challenges, but I do love it. I've always loved a challenge. So I think that was another thing that really kept me going and helped me to stick at it. I like getting pushed. I don't like to take the easy way out of things. I like to, really test myself. So I just took it. I took that mentality really after the accident. I'm like, rightio, I've been given a challenge now to overcome and adapt to life with one arm. Let's smash it.
Yeah, and playing golf with one arm as well is it's it's something you never thought you'd be able to do, but even pulling down those barriers as well. Because what I like is that you didn't say that the way you overcame this by being, a macho man or by being a tough bloke. You did it by pulling down your barriers and speaking and talking to people and finding something like golf to as a bit of an outlet or as something to something to give yourself a challenge in a way. I don't want to say to distract you because it's not really a distraction, but something to sort of give yourself, I guess, something to put your energy towards.
But yeah, it's like redirecting energy and focus. Yeah, that's a great way, actually. Much better way of framing it rather than distraction. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And also, can I ask for the moving forward, like what would you say? Because I mean, for each person, when they go through something in their life, they have a bit of a mission to sum up. Like for me, I know that sounds really cheesy, but for me, my personal goal, like as a person, is to have as much of a positive impact as I can on people's lives. What that looks like, I don't know in the future. But that's me. That's I just want to be able to do as many things for as many people as possible. What would you say yours, if you had to sort of sum it up in a way, like what would you, actually two questions. First of all, how would you have defined it before the accident? And how would you define it now? Is it the same thing? Has it changed?
One part of it has stayed the same. I love putting a smile on people's faces, or making people laugh. I've always been, growing up in school, I definitely was, the typical class clown, so to speak. And um, I think it's just such a rewarding thing if you can put a smile on someone's face and make them laugh. And honestly, laughter was what got me through a lot of my tough times as well. So that side of it has very much stayed the same. I love it. I didn't realize when I was younger that it was such a big passion of mine. I just thought it was just me and part of me. And I think my whole family have that similar gene and that bug. We just love, and who doesn't? Like, you can solve so many things by just having a really good laugh, really, to be honest. It's like, it's truly, honestly, one of the best medicines. Now as well, it's still, I think, similar to yourself, wanting to help people. So there's obviously the helping people in the commercial real estate business. So my approach to many things in life, like how I said earlier, I love a challenge. I like, I suppose, fixing things and solving problems. And that was a big passion when I was a diesel fitter. I see everything as, well, there's a problem, I've got to fix it. So the problem used to be there's a broken down truck, I've got to fix it. Whereas the problem now in commercial real estate, someone's got a vacancy, someone needs to sell a building, someone has some mortgages, whatever it is. They've got a problem and we're there to solve it. So we come with that outside of the box thinking, rather than just a cookie cutter approach of, well, this is what we do for everyone, so you're going to do this as well. Like, this is our marketing process. It's like, no, let's listen to your problems and let's tailor a solution for that. And similarly so with the safety work, the problem is people are still having accidents. People still have poor mindsets, or sometimes there's not even poor mindsets. Sometimes it's actually they're just unaware of the true impact and the potential of what these bits of machinery and the negative impact they can have on your life. And it's my job to go there and make them realize the true potential and the true impacts and how dangerous these things can be if we don't approach them with the right attitude, right awareness, and right processes. So I think it all revolves around trying to help people in a way, one way or another, which is just so rewarding. And it's helping me put a positive spin on such a terrible accident. I feel as though if I didn't go out and deliver these safety presentations, I'd be doing a disservice to KV and his family, because they've had to pay the ultimate sacrifice by the father and husband not making it home at the end of the day. I've been given such an amazing second opportunity, and I think it's my responsibility to make the most of that. And I owe it to KV to go and do that by sharing this story and trying my absolute best to make sure that another family doesn't go through what his family have, and similarly with mine. I think, yeah, my obligation, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's what KV would. That's definitely what KV would want. He'd want this situation to be one that others can learn from, and something that, because I mean, even through the demonstrations, the talks that you've done, like you've probably saved countless lives. You just don't realize it.
Yeah,
And
it's going
he
to be
has
hard to
saved
put a
countless
number on it.
lives
Yeah.
without indirectly.
Yep. Yep.
So it's impossible to put a number on it, but it is possible to think about, to know how many people have listened to your story and do think twice about things sometimes, or at least it's, or even just a reminder. It's like, if there's ever this a safety protocol that someone thinks they're just going to cut corners on, they'll probably think about one of your talks and think, this is what Josh said, or I remember Josh was talking about this. No, I'm not going to do that. It's like using our phones while driving. Every time I'm
Yep.
about to touch my phone,
Yep.
my wife's voice jumps in my ear. So mate, what you're doing, I think, is so powerful. And to be honest with you, I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I literally want to thank you for sharing your story, not just with me, but just with others, and being able to talk about it, because, um, you know, it's something which you probably never thought you'd ever want to talk about, but you're doing it for good, and you're doing it to help others. So yeah,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much, mate. That means a lot. No, I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, and also, Josh, I want to ask if anybody wants to get in contact with you. What would be the best way for them to do that? And I say that because of I guess, the two main things that you currently do, which is the real estate, and if you want to briefly maybe explain that as well for those listening,
Yeah,
and what you
certainly.
do,
Yeah. So
and the safety.
late last year, me and say three of my best mates now, which is a pretty cool thing in itself, working with your best mates. It's very rewarding. But yeah, so we took our own Ray White commercial franchise. So we're one of the newer franchises in Brisbane. Um, Not to say that we're new to the industry. We've been, between the four of us, there's over about 45 years worth of industry experience there, plus the rest of the team as well. And yeah, so that's pretty rewarding actually. And that's we started it right at a bit of a pointy end of a market with all these interest rate hikes and everything else, but things are going well. So that's yeah, so we're loving that. And then my safety, so yeah, that comes under the banner of OAB Safe. And for those listening at home and might not have seen a photo of me or anything, but the OAB stands for One Arm Bandit, and that's just me. I've just embraced that nickname from the start. And I think that just goes down to what I was saying earlier about that laughter element. You just got to sometimes take what gets thrown your way and make the most out of it. So OAB Safe revolves around, I suppose, just sharing the story within the workplace, within initially high risk industries, but that's actually evolving now. We're looking, getting requests for more corporate environments, trying to branch into touching on the accident, but then coming into it from the overcoming adversity and the resilience aspect, and how that can then form part of in creating a better workplace culture in corporate environments that aren't necessarily exposed to hazards. I'll be doing one of my biggest keynote speaking in the near future, and that will evolve over time as well. That website's under construction, so that'll be open. That should probably be up and running, I'd imagine, by the time this podcast hits the air. So yeah, OAB Safe will be online. But again, Instagram, if people are curious and just want to see how I swing a golf club, you can find Josh OAB on Instagram or on LinkedIn as well. But I am an open book as well. So even if people are out there and just sort of finding that what I'm saying is kind of resonating with them, and that they're going through something similar mentally, or just want to reach out and sort of ask for any more advice or just share something, I'm honestly truthful when I mean it, that they're more than welcome to do so.
Thank you, Josh. You're an absolute champ. And for those that never caught on to it earlier, you've only got one full arm. Josh only has one full arm, literally. So it's hence how amazed I am that he can actually play golf, and probably 10 times better than me. In fact, I think my 5-year-old can play better than me anyway. So it's oh, good. And speaking of humor, Josh, I like to finish all my episodes off with a dad joke. And I found the perfect dad joke. But I don't know if you've heard it, but why did the golfer bring an extra pair of pants?
Why is that one?
In case you got a hole in one.
I thought that might have been the one coming. I thought I'll let you deliver it.
Yeah.
That's
it's
great.
I like my jokes. I like my dad jokes. And I
Yeah.
think when I started my first episode, when I had a guest on, I thought, I'm just going to crack a dad joke. And make that my thing because I mean, no one laughs at them anyway. So I might as well just have it on my own episodes and
Yeah,
get to say as many
perfect.
as I want. So
Yeah, love it. No, that's great.
yeah. Now, again, thank you so much for your time, Josh. Really
My pleasure,
appreciate it.
Michael.
Honestly, it really, really means a lot. I'm not just saying it. And keep doing what you're doing, and yeah, and keep spreading the word.
Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.